Hello, I'm Fred Evans. Welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The tragedy in Orlando, Florida continues to affect lives in our country and community. Brian Karem, the executive editor of the Sentinel newspapers, will comment. Monday, June 27th is the National AIDS Testing Day, and CCI Health and Wellness Services is providing free testing at all of its sites. Calie Edmonds, a community health worker at the center, will describe the program. The state's attorney's office has a variety of responsibilities. Rexanah Wyse, who heads the truancy prevention program, will explain the rest of what she does in her office. Recently, the principal of Bethesda Chevy Chase High School had her decision about students attending their high school graduation overturned. Linna Barnes, who comments for this program, will tell us why this change occurred. How are you, sir?
Fred, pretty good. How you doing, brother?
Very good, very good.
So Orlando, we're talking
Yes, sir.
Orlando. The big thing here locally is, of course, what happened in Congress. There was a sit-in with members of our congressional delegation joining others, Democrats, as a sit-in to try and get some changes made to the gun laws. And, of course, locally we've seen a division, again, along party lines as far as who supports gun control and who doesn't. And there's a fundamental misunderstanding, I think, on both sides of what's going on, and it continues to be a problem that seems intractable. People don't really want to try to reach a compromise.
Will we ever resolve this? I think it's one of the most serious domestic issues, maybe the most.
It is a huge domestic issue. And to answer your question, I don't have that magic ball to see. The problem is it's not going to change unless there's some compromise. The far right has one issue that they continually forget that is legitimate, and that's about personal responsibility. Guns, in fact, don't actually kill people. People pulling the trigger do.
Well, Brian,
but they miss that by saying that therefore there should be. The NRA is so afraid of losing a battle they won't give in at all.
Do you see? I mean, is there any way to get compromise on this?
The only way to
even
get
in a state.
I think they picked on the wrong group of people this time. I think, they are bringing up this issue, and I believe the gay and lesbian community is going to be the community that will defeat the NRA, because if there's anything stronger than the NRA, it's that group, and I think they've got a good issue. There has to be. Look, I don't care whether you call it an assault weapon or you call it a semi-automatic rifle, whatever it is, you got to keep it out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them. There has to be some restriction. There has to be a roadblock.
What do you think from us?
Well, I'm interested in knowing your opinion as far as what can happen state-wise, especially in this county, because I know there are differing opinions when it comes to gun control.
Statewide, I don't think you're going to see a huge change because we already have some very strict gun laws in the state, and of course, I don't think Governor Hogan, although he's not voting for Trump, I don't think he's going to differ too much from his Republican brethren in that regard. I don't think that anyone sees compromise. All they see is they're in one corner saying one thing, someone else is in another corner saying everything else, and no one is reaching for the art of half a loaf. Look, personal responsibility is an issue, but you got to have a roadblock. So you got to meet halfway. You got to keep guns out of the hands of people who are going to commit violence. And how do you do that?
But it seems to me, given what's happening on Congress, where it seems that's going to be immovable, it really does seem to me that it comes down to the states and each individual state trying to come up with different laws.
Well, if it comes down to this state, you're going to see, I believe, Mr. Miller in our legislative process will have his will and his way, and I think you will see stricter gun control legislation over the head of the governor. I would see a veto and then voting it over his head, going over the veto. But I don't know that at this point in time, restrictive gun ownership in Maryland is an answer. This is a nationwide problem that has to be dealt with nationally. It has to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
You cannot walk into a gun store, purchase a gun, and then go out and kill somebody. It just can't happen. The NRA loves to say they want to come and take your guns. All right, here's every gun that Obama's taken away from us in the last 8 years. Oh, it's empty. Right, he hasn't. That hasn't happened. But being able to, I have to go out, my kid to get a driver's license has to take, lessons and in-car training. Any fool can go and purchase a weapon without any kind of training, without any kind of registration, without much of a background check. It has to change. It has to. And that's where the Democrats are absolutely 100% accurate right.
Rexanah, what?
Calie.
Oh, Calie. Oh, here we go.
So I found it interesting that you mentioned the LGBT community earlier, and you thought that they might have the tools to wage war and actually win this battle. Can you tell us more about why you think that that community
Because
is
they're
well
probably the
positioned?
best organized advocate community in the United States, and the NRA has a bad issue, and the NRA hasn't compromised. And if there's one thing that the NRA hasn't run across, and it's bulldozed everybody. But when you have to wake up every morning and to survive, fight against society just for your right to survive, you got a little tougher backbone than people give you credit for. And I think the NRA's run into the brick wall with this one. I think there will be change. There has to be change. And the sad part is there hasn't been change before. Newtown.
But we've been saying this for years. Sandy Hook, Newtown. When I was a principal, Columbine.
It goes back before that. Robert Kennedy in '68 made a very emotional
the
plea.
Texas Tower.
Yeah,
no,
John Kennedy,
but
Martin Luther
that's
King,
exactly
John Lennon.
That's exactly my point. It is something that we constantly have these discussions, and it ends in discussion without any action.
And I think there's going to, it is unprecedented. Do not mistake what happened in Congress this week. It is unprecedented. Not since the 60s have you had a sit-in. And when have you ever had a sit-in in Congress by congressmen, led by a 60s activist?
Right, John Lewis.
Yeah, by John Lewis. That is unprecedented. It is historic. And if you miss the hallmarks of that, my friend, you're missing, we're at a turning point in history. This can't go on.
I hope we're in a turning point
We
in
are
history.
at a turning point in history.
Mark
my words.
I'm hoping that we are. Very much so. Very much so. Any last comments in 10 seconds?
In 10 seconds or less, if you ever cared about a loved one, if you ever want to see a change, let your congressman know now.
That's a good point. Good point. Thank you very much. Calie, tell us about the Awareness Day that's coming up on the 27th. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. On June 27th, it will be National HIV Testing Day, and multiple community-based organizations and health departments will be deploying in Prince George's and Montgomery County to go out and provide free HIV testing to individuals who may not otherwise have access to tests or be aware of their HIV status. And this is important because of the 1.2 million people who are living with HIV in the United States, approximately 1 in 8 are not aware of their status.
Really?
Really.
Whoa.
So
How many is that in Montgomery County?
I don't know the specifics of Montgomery County, but it's essential that we identify these people who are living with HIV, because we know that once you are able to get into treatment, your outcome and your quality of life is highly improved.
how do you get the word out to those people who don't know that they may have that HIV or AIDS status?
Sure, so part of our technique is just to go into the community. We'll be setting up at grocery stores and malls and introducing the services to people where they normally congregate. Additionally, we're working with other agencies that can dispatch community health workers and people on the ground level to go out and tell people that it's a testing event and they can come in for free and get tested. And if they are identified as being HIV positive, then we'll link them to care, such as organizations such as CCI Health and Wellness Services, where they can receive treatment and receive integrated services, case management, behavioral health, and therapeutic services.
Is there still a stigma? Is that part of the reason why? Or is it, not identifying yourself, not testing, even if you feel like is there still that emotional stigma that goes with being HIV positive?
There's definitely still that stigma, and we hear that regularly. People are afraid that they're going to be discriminated against.
Right.
People have antiquated ideas of what living with HIV looks and sounds like. But what we know for sure is, again, testing and treatment are ways to preserve quality of life. And we've worked with individuals who have met partners who are HIV negative. They're able to engage in relationships without transferring the virus. They're able to have babies and have HIV negative babies. And so the medical science has progressed. So we've got to work on the stigma part.
And I was in New York City 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, when it really started, And that's what I think people are looking back on, this incredibly devastating disease where people were dying at incredible rates of certain communities that were very highly affected. And I think people look at that and go, that's what my future will be if I find out.
That's the whole Rock
so
Hudson
I'd rather,
thing.
Right,
Yeah.
I'd rather not know, because if I don't know, I'm not, I won't have this threat. But that's what's so sad, because it's changed from 30 years ago.
It really has changed. People are able to live a normal lifespan, and they're able to engage in all of the life goals and reach all of
And
their...
that's fascinating, because when the disease first came out, it was like the goal was to make it, they said that you couldn't cure it, but you could make it like a maintenance issue like diabetes, and now they have.
It is.
See, that's why you don't mess with the gay and lesbian community. They'll solve problems. That's
And it's a beautiful thing. It's a manageable disease. And so what we are doing is helping people first identify that they're living with HIV, and then inviting them in, as specifically at CCI, into an interdisciplinary model and supporting them. And not only, we're supporting the whole person. So not only addressing the HIV issue, but also helping them work through any housing issues or any food insecurity.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are there counseling opportunities for family members of folks who have HIV?
Sure.
Do you have that? How they handle their friend, their mate, their spouse?
Sure. So finding out that you're living with a chronic illness can be stressful, not only to the person living with the chronic illness, but to everyone in the household, the children, the partners. And so we do provide therapeutic support, and we do have someone who can sit down and help process what that diagnosis means, and help people work through the fear and the anger and the hurt, and so that they can move into a healthier space.
How often can clients receive these services? Is it an everyday thing or once a month type of thing?
So we actually have introduced the testing portion into every annual clinical visits. And so the CDC recommends that everyone ages 13 to 64 be tested for HIV at least once. And so what we've done is we've made HIV testing routine, everyone. Because HIV doesn't only affect certain, socioeconomic demographics. It doesn't discriminate based on race or sexual orientation. It affects everyone. And so there are a lot of people who are not volunteering to get tested. They don't identify themselves as being high risk. And so the state of Maryland has encouraged us, and we have integrated.
But
We have about 10 seconds.
So even if you've been in a long-standing relationship with one person, you should still be tested.
You should still get tested. And if you come to our clinic during your annual exam, when you get tested for diabetes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol, you'll also be tested for HIV.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very important, as all our sessions are. And we have to take a break right now, so we'll be right back. Thank you. And we're back. Rexanah, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to be able to talk about the truancy program.
Please tell us more about it.
Yes. So we wrapped up the year, and we finished the program having over 170 students improve their attendance, and close to 130 students successfully graduate from the program. We're partnered with 15 middle schools, and because of Montgomery County Council, we're able to expand to 5 more schools.
Excellent.
Excellent.
So we'll be able to be at 20 schools by the 2016-17 school
Now,
year.
when you say they graduated, what exactly does that mean? What does a student have to accomplish in order to?
Simply by showing up. So if they're able to reduce their unexcused absences by 60% or more, they're eligible to graduate. Showing up, being engaged. And the whole point of this truancy program, the reason why this prosecuting office has it, is to be able to get students to be re-engaged with the school and not fall victim to committing juvenile offenses, getting down the wrong path, dropping out of high school or dropping out of middle school, and eventually being a part of the criminal justice system. It's all about intervention and preventionary work.
Excellent.
And it seems like a really good time to do it, because middle school, it sets them up for doing much, much better in high school, which is really where a lot of
That's where most of your truancy begins.
Yeah, exactly. It begins in middle school, but then it just goes out of control in high school.
And that's exactly why we focus on the middle school students, to capture them before they get off to the high school level and develop negative behavior patterns.
And is there any can you categorize the type of person who's most likely to be truant? Does it break
Well,
down into any particular category?
There isn't any specific type of person. We've seen truancy issues where it's something as simple as a student not having an alarm clock, or they have many responsibilities at home, so they're parentified, meaning after school they're going home taking care of their younger siblings. There could be mental health issues, there can be emotional based issues.
Single parents?
Well, single parents, which is actually pretty often, it's not the reason, but many single parents who may have multiple jobs or other responsibilities, that child's attendance may not be the priority. So we work with the schools, we work with the students to combat that. But we not only have this truancy program, this prosecuting office, our sole responsibility is to make sure that the safety of the public is the #1 priority. So we're prosecuting felony cases, we're prosecuting misdemeanor cases. We also go out and do cyber safety presentations. There's been an uptick with the students being cyberbullied or being victimized, whether it's through sexual conduct by communicating with a stranger, so cyber talking to people they don't know, or harassment. We also do preventing elder abuse presentations, so going to these senior communities to let them know what they can do so they don't become victims of these crimes. We have financial fraud presentations. We expand our reach, trying to reach out to many different communities to let them know these are the resources.
So it's proactive work
Very
as
much
opposed to
so.
what may be a stereotype about the state's attorney's office where you're just prosecuting all of that. I mean, that's
Exactly.
You're
obviously
working yourself out of a job, kid.
Pretty much. State Attorney John McCarthy has this vision where he doesn't want to see, he doesn't want to prosecute cases. He wants the number to be 0. But in order to do that,
Right.
we have this proactive approach.
And it sounds like the program's been incredibly effective. Can you tell us more about the strategies that you're using with the children and the children and the families to reduce truancy?
Certainly. So we partner with the middle schools, whether it's counselors, the principals, the assistant principals, the teachers, as well as students. We partner with MCPD, so the police force. We have community volunteers who have been adjunct professors, social work students. We collaborate together to meet with the students each week during a 10-week period to figure out the root causes of their attendance issues and to not only get to the bottom of that, but address it, whether it's connecting the students or the families to resources. So
What percentage of the kids actually do better?
So we have at least 60% of the students who go off to continue to reduce their unexcused absences. A study conducted by the University of Maryland looked at our fall cohort. From that study, 68% of the students went on to continue to reduce their unexcused absences after they completed the program.
Do these kids come in excited for the program? I mean, or do you get these kids going, yeah, more adults talking to me about stuff that matters to me not?
The latter. So they're definitely not excited to see us. They're in a room full of all of these adults. But the turning point is they see that we actually care. We're not doing this to reprimand them and say,
Right.
hey, get your act together, but more so, how can we help you? We are trying to legitimize you and make sure that you feel as a member of this community.
We have about 15 seconds.
Okay.
There's a phone number that someone can call if they.
Yes.
What is it? If you could.
240-777-7461.
That was on the screen. And whatever the final word that you'd like to give us about this program.
It takes a village to raise a child.
There you go.
We appreciate any community volunteers. If you're interested, please contact that phone number.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you very much. This is a very important discussion as the prior discussions.
No problem.
Ms. Barnes, how are
Yes,
you?
Mr. Evans, I'm fine, thank you. How are you today?
Tell us about this recent situation at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School, which hit the news quite hard.
It did hit the news quite hard.
And essentially 5 students were not allowed to march in graduation.
No. So the story begins with prom. Before prom, when the principal, who is Donna Redmond Jones, announced to everyone that if you were caught drinking during the prom or after prom, there would be a direct punishment, and that would be you would not participate in graduation.
If you were a senior, obviously.
If you were a senior, that you would not be allowed to graduate with your class. And 5 students at the after prom party, which is sponsored by the PTA, were found to have be quite intoxicated between prom and the after prom.
But to be honest, and we covered this issue quite extensively, they were suspected.
Suspected, yes.
They were not
yes.
tested. They were not proven. They were not charged with anything.
No, and that was the suspected. So that was it. When the next day she said, "This is, I said what the punishment would be. This is it. I'm supporting, this parents want the after prom and want their children not to be drinking, and you're not graduating." So the students and
Not
their
marching.
parents, not marching.
Yeah.
They would graduate.
They would graduate.
Not marching at Constitution
Right.
Hall with the rest of the class. So the students appealed it to the acting superintendent, Larry Bowers, and he looked at it and he reversed the decision. So that sets up the story. You have the principal's decision being overturned. You have the many parents who were sponsoring the after prom, working very hard on that, feeling that they'd been disrespected. You have the students very happy and saying, "Yes, I'm going to get to march."
So then, what long-lasting effects happens because of this decision?
It's interesting. I don't know. And both my girls went to BC Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. They both went to after prom, and there weren't these consequences, and there was a lot of drinking going on at
Well,
after
there's been
prom.
a lot of drinking going on at proms and graduations since they began proms and graduations.
Absolutely.
Well, not
I think the issue,
maybe
not
proms,
graduation.
but
But the
not
issue-
graduations.
okay.
Well, I
Well,
know
I
what you were
graduated from a
doing at
different school,
graduation.
Yeah,
All right,
I guess.
but nonetheless, the point being, I think it broke down to, it was a suspicion of drinking. There was nothing proven.
Whoa.
That's exactly what happened.
The suspicion of drinking, there are very few, having been a principal, there are very few principals who have to do the breathalyzer to know whether a student
Absolutely.
whether
I'm
a
not.
student
I'm
has
talking
been
about
drinking.
legal issues.
Well,
The
but
legal
this wasn't a
issue of
legal
why-
issue. This was an issue of school-wide discipline, and and I know I
Former
I was going to say
Former
former
principal. I know.
principal.
school-wide discipline where the students were drinking. In fact, I believe the students acknowledged
so
that
then
they
the
were
actual issue is not the school. It's that the principals have their own little fiefdoms, and the fact that the acting superintendent said, "No, you don't."
drinking. No,
That's what it boils down to.
no, that's not.
That's exactly what it is.
No, well, that's one way to perceive it, but that is not.
But that's what it
because,
is.
No, because there are other principals who have done the same thing in the past. I did it, when I was
And they backed
principal.
you up.
That's correct, and it was never.
So why
appealed.
wasn't it backed up this time?
That's it. That's the ultimate
Well, I
question.
think it's
I know what the
interesting with
ultimate. It fell
the
down on legal
advocacy-
issues.
Happens next. That's the thing.
Well, they've graduated.
Yeah.
They marched. They marched
Right.
with their class, so it's sort of gone. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year. One of the reasons why after proms went in, it started becoming the thing to do, was because of the parties after the prom was over in people's houses where there was a lot of drinking, and the idea was we're going to have this alcohol-free party that students can go to, and you keep them there by having incredible giveaways, as I recall.
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
you
that's
go
No,
up.
they work very effectively.
and
based
For
on
some
my
people, but you can't snag 100% of the people. Somebody, you can't snag 100%
No, you
of the
can't.
truth.
And generally, I think this was the first time at BCC you had this consequence. This is a new principal. It's also her first year, which is unfortunate that she had this controversy where she wasn't
So the
supported.
question then is, does it undermine the principle?
And I think that's the real issue.
And does it set a precedent for the future, as far as if students get involved in this type of behavior again?
And you have about 30 seconds to answer
To
that
say,
question.
I think it
Well,
does
you
set
should.
a prep. I know
No,
it does.
She's the
I'm
guest.
the
I'm
guest.
supposed to be neutral. I'm the moderator.
I think it does set up a precedent that there are no consequences, and if the principal does come up with a consequence, it might well not be upheld by her boss.
And it should
I
be.
have to conclude right here. We're out of time, but thank you all very, very much. Thank all of you for joining me this week, and thank you for joining all of us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Fred Evans. Please join us next week at this same time. Thank you all.